G'day, I'm Ash. Welcome yourselves back to War Thunder. This time we're going to be flying the French Ugly Duckling. Do apologise for the lack of content recently. I have been feeling a bit under the weather. I am still recovering from a case of the man flu. Now, I couldn't let you be without a upload this week, and obviously the decal is coming out sometime in the next week or so. So I do apologise. If you want 3% off anything in War Thunder, link in the description, and thanks for your support. More importantly, it's been fun to sort of really take a bit of a break, heal up, and focus on other things. I have a part-time job, and that has been taking a little bit more of my focus, as well as, focusing on other aspects of health. So I have had limited time to really sit down and actually play this game a great deal. Unfortunately, what that does mean is I'm now suffering from a bout of I'm running out of footage, and running out of things to talk about too. Although I'd like to sort of do content like Spookston, or European Canadian, or About Thunder, or cover news topics. Reality is, I have no idea. I might just start making videos on other games completely. We can't stick with War Thunder forever, and in today's sort of video, we're going to be checking out possibly the worst French little vehicle that I've ever flown. This is my first match in this machine. I unlocked it once, and we've almost got all the modules. That we'll get into in a bit of a minute. The bombs are internal. It can hold some internal bombs. It's only got 90 rounds of cannon forward firing, and then it's got a decent amount of machine gun. It really, really suffers, and the aim reticle on the vehicle itself is below the horizon, so you're aiming, well, you have to aim a bit higher in order to really get anywhere. Anyway, I do apologise if I sound a bit off the beaten track and a bit ill, and if I get distracted, I do apologise. Essentially, you're looking at one of the worst French aircraft I've ever flown, but for some reason it worked in this match, and I have a feeling I know why, and I'll explain that as we go on. Anyway, sit back, grab some popcorn, toss me a like if you can. I don't often ask for that, and if you're new to the channel, welcome, I'm Ash. I sometimes do videos, but I don't normally sound as clogged up as this. Righto, let's get into the gameplay, Christ. This is possibly the worst aircraft I've ever flown. This is a French BR693AB2. If that name wasn't confusing enough, this thing was introduced back in Update 1.93 Shark Attack, and it's relatively unknown. It was one of the low-tier vehicles that nobody really cared about. It's got a decent cockpit, has a decent rate of climb. There isn't really much else to say about it. Battle rating of 2.0 in arcade battles, and in realistic and simulator battles it sits at 1.7. You might think that's a little bit low, but with two horrible Gnome Rhone engines, the 14-cylinder radials, they're not exactly the greatest. With air cooling, this thing struggles whenever it gets hit with any sort of machine gun fire. Anyhow, I do remember when this thing first came out, it was like, oh, an interesting aircraft. Oh, wait, yeah, no, it's kind of crap. We are flying in a squad of 4 of them today. The other guys in the squad will get a couple of kills between them, but we're going to focus on sort of my perspective here. Immediately off the bat, we are climbing directly up the guts. We're in that map, I can't remember its name. Essentially, it's the Japanese forces versus the Russian ones in terms of ground forces. Although air realistic battles these days is primarily mixed battles, what you have essentially is a bunch of attackers and bombers flying directly at you. So, there it is. Considering this thing gets an air spawn though, a pretty decent one at that, it can be kind of useful. So, use that to your advantage, because this machine could be up to you in the near future. We'll have to wait and see. I still can't believe that this thing was introduced in Update 1.93 Shark Attack, which was 29th of October 2019. We're flying through these years. I feel like the pandemic has just accelerated time. Although, I am getting older, and I am coming up on my 10-year anniversary of War Thunder at February next year. Anyhow, that's aside, the flight performance of this machine is quite interesting. Now, we've got a couple of fighters ahead of us here. I'll talk about that in a second. But as you can see, the perfect interception path, because a lot of those fighters are just sort of taking off. Especially considering that this game had just started to fill up as it was a later sort of style. The F3F here decides he is going to be nice and brave. We're going to toy with his idea. Now, ideally, we could have died here. Give him a quick burst of the guns and the cannons. He is now on fire. There are 2 more targets, and potentially a third if we really engage ourselves correctly. P-36 doesn't know we're coming in for him. This is basically GG from his point of view. There's not much you can do here. All I have to do is lead the gun sight up above the horizon while my friends are circling in and also trying to get hits on things. Pulling down on this P400, and I'm going to make a crucial error to this particular mission. Friendly D510 shoots down a TBD, and this is when I clobber the wing of the poor P400. Jeebus manages to kill the P36A that was also over on that direction. That nets him a kill. I, unfortunately, am making myself go back to base. This thing's horrible. I mean, the video isn't going to show that it's horrible, but honestly, this thing has one of the highest top speeds of any strike aircraft that I've seen. It just does not want to rip. We played only one match in this. The other boys didn't really have a good time playing it, but I, for the most part, because I limped back to base with this broken wing, managed to do okay. Now, maximum speed at 4,000 meters is 495 kilometers an hour. That is quite substantial. It means it's one of the fastest aircraft there is in the game, period. Especially at low tiers like this. Anyway, we're coming back on the airfield. The other guys are still having a bunch of fun, and they're airfield camping and trying to kill an I-16. They all finally die. I'm the last one left, and, well, we're ready to go up and take off again. Should be mentioned that this landing gear is absolutely horrible. I don't know why they just put it on such large pegs. It's it's such a unique design. Have a look at this thing whenever you get the chance. The takeoff runs about 350-ish meters, give or take, depending on how hard you want to push the engines. The engines themselves are quite durable. They are French, though, so they're prone to overheating. There is that. This thing does get combat flaps, takeoff flaps, landing flaps. It does not have an air brake, and certainly doesn't have an arrestor. What you see me doing here is, after taking off, is looking through the combat log to figure out which aircraft is which. Managed to figure out that there is a BB-1 and a SBD with gun pods, or a TBD with gun pods. One of the two. Just taking off, I can sort of see the dot taking off there. I'm sort of just scanning the horizon. Like, yeah, there it is. And then there's obviously that BB-1 who I highlighted with a blind hunt. Limits to the airframe is quite interesting. The wings don't rip until you hit about 600 kilometers an hour. So in a dive, this thing is absolutely masterful. However, the elevators don't necessarily like you too much. And while they are good elevators, they do rip off at quite a substantial speed. 350 kilometers plus. So its top speed is its only saving grace. It's relatively got a poor climb rate overall. I wouldn't say it's the greatest there. It does have 2 crew. It does have a 10mm steel plate for the pilot and for the gunner. It's got self-sealing fuel tanks, 3 in each wing, and the Talisman costs us 400 GE. Modifications-wise, you do get access to belts and other weaponry, and it can also get some bombs as well if you really want. The 850 kilogram 50 bombers, which is 400 kilograms of total ordnance. Otherwise, you've got a single 20mm Hispano 404, which is 90 rounds per gun, and there's only one of those. And then there is 2 7.5mm Mac 1934 machine guns with 500 rounds per gun, which equals 1,000. Now, your dead down here is actually being quite smart. I've dived on him from an optimal angle. So what do? Turn in at an optimal point. Now, because this is a H-style configuration, normally I would have committed to that kind of climb. He's going to turn back on myself. I'm just going to continue the climb up, hoping the friendly can come in and just have a bunch of fun with him. That way I can then clean up. And this machine is just superb sometimes. Offensive guns are nose-mounted, meaning the convergence isn't an issue. And take note that the guns are also slightly tilted downwards, which can take some getting used to. Which I'm trying to sort of put a bead on these SBD-3. You can sort of see here, he stands no chance. That is the 4th kill of this match. Now, time to go after the BB-1. Now, do I play with my food, or do I just go in and commit? Because it has relatively responsive, good maneuverability for a twin-engine fighter, it really just, excels at just fighting and hunting bombers. So if you're ever flying this machine, try and hunt the ground attackers and bombers, and even some of the other fighters. You will struggle with I-16s, and you will struggle with certain other types of aircraft, such as the early 109s, but again, it gets an air spawn, it has a dorsal defensive turret with strong firing angles, and a fixed ventral machine gun, which is utterly useless, the one directly underneath the aircraft. But here we go. Going in on the BB-1 right here, pull right around. Careful with the speed, Drop the throttle just a little bit, get a critical hit, try and spray and pray. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop the throttle drastically here, pop the combat flaps, maybe, I don't know. I have no idea what I was doing. I think I just slowed down briefly. Give him the old rat-a-tat, critical hit him, knock out his rear gunner, and unfortunately he is now going to hit the ground. Meaning, that is possibly the easiest ace I've had in this vehicle. I've never flown this machine before. This is the first time flying it. So, you know, it was a miraculous, I guess, mission. Now, I'd like to ask you guys to share this video around with anyone you'd like. Do they like oddball aircraft or French or weird aviation vehicles? This one is definitely one of those wacky things that I recommend people try and at least have a look at. I got 5 kills in this one. My squad mate Jeebus got 2. The other 2 boys were not so lucky. That being said though, 5,000 research points, almost 6,000, and 27,000 silvers. Not bad for a winning match. And we've basically almost unlocked every single module from playing this vehicle from stock. So there you go. Big thank you to my Patreon supporters and Twitch subscribers and everybody who has been following the channel recently. I really appreciate it. And to the people who have bought a vehicle or bought some Golden Eagles with my 3% discount link. It's fantastic that you guys are still supporting the channel, even though my viewership is a little lower than expected. I do appreciate that, and I hope to get better in the near future, and hopefully I can produce better videos as well. So, hopefully you enjoyed that. My name is Ash, and I'll catch you in the next one.